Quite a few times I've described the Fyreslayers from AOS as the most boring range of models that Games Workshop has ever made, but it looks like that has actually finally changed. Now, I can probably guess that some of you are thinking, well, what are they supposed to do with a bunch of half-naked dwarves with mohawks? What could they possibly do to make them more interesting or exciting? I mean, for a start, the fact that the entire army is just dwarves in loincloths with mohawks kind of makes it a little tricky, but it is possible, it is doable, and I've never really been sure how they would make the Fyreslayers more interesting, but luckily, they've been thinking about it far more than I have, because they've revealed the Vulcan Flameseekers for Warcry, and they are actually really good. Firstly, we have some lady dwarves in here. We actually have some lady dwarves, some lady fantasy dwarves, and they look fantastic. Now, let's just get something out of the way. Okay, let's just get this out of the way now. Your eyes did not deceive you, they do not have beards. The lady dwarves do not have beards, and that's totally okay, because whilst Tolkien did write that all dwarves have beards, and of course Terry Pratchett took that idea and ran with it with the Discworld, making it an entire cultural and societal issue that the dwarves are starting to overcome in the later books in terms of female presentation within that particular society. This isn't Discworld and this isn't Lord of the Rings, so it's fine. Like, this isn't a Middle-earth thing, this is an AOS thing, and AOS is not the same universe as those, so it's okay for them to not have beards. It's fine. Anyway, beards or no, they look fantastic. They look really good, and this whole warband, they've done the thing that I knew must have been possible in some way. Like, it must be possible to make the Fyreslayers interesting in some respects, and they actually have done it. They've actually achieved it. This is a really nice warband. We actually have some variety going on. Yes, they do all have the whole cloak and loincloth thing going on, but there's differences in terms of, like, little things like the axes there. We've got two lads who could, at a glance, look extremely similar. In fact, they do look extremely similar. But we have differences in weapons. We have differences in ornamentation on the bodies. The big man himself, the head lad there with his with his crazy shoulder pads with goggles holding eggs, looks absolutely fantastic. Look, there's just lots of little things all over these models to differentiate them from each other. They've actually made them look not like the same model repeated over and over and over again, which is my whole issue with the Fyreslayers range. It's the thing that I've struggled with when it comes to that range, because at a glance it looks like you've copied and pasted the same dude over and over. This doesn't look like that. There's a really nice variety of poses, there's a good range of movement across all of them. I would suggest that there are some fairly significant, or at least maybe not fairly significant differences in every weapon, but there are recognisable changes and personalisation that stands out more than in the standard Fyreslayer squad that you get. Each one of these models just has more personality. I think that's the only way to phrase it. They're more visually appealing. There is more range in terms of skin tone. I mean, even just the skin tone changes. We actually have variety. They're not all just the same pasty white guy. Like, that's massive in and of itself. These decorative runes that are kind of like sunk into the skin on some of them makes a massive difference. Like, this is great. This is so good. It is genuinely like night and day comparing the Dawnbringer's like Fury's Flamebearers box that is still available, comparing this with that warband. Like, the movement is nowhere near as good on these sculpts. The absolute uniformity of, like, their hair especially does absolutely nothing to differentiate different models. And of course, when you look at the poses, obviously a good number of repeated poses in there as well. The fact that every single dwarf has got the same skin tone, like, this is a boring box, right? It's just boring. It's boring as hell. And I did a video about how boring it was last year because I saw it and immediately thought that that is the most uninspiring thing I've ever seen for what is supposed to be like a special box of special guys. I mean, immediately switching from that to this, oh, these are just so much better. They're just so much better. Actual enjoyable differences I think it's also worth saying that there are changes to the way they've done the hair on these as well. Like the way the hair's been painted is a lot more dynamic and more visually appealing. Instead of just one bright orange, instead you've got this much more interesting like flame motif going on. Honestly, the fact that some of them aren't blokes does a huge amount, because you have a difference in terms of like the facial presentation without the beards. That creates a significant difference that stands out very quickly in a good way. Oh, I'm just really, really liking this squad. They look fantastic. There isn't a single model that I don't like. Given that the Fyreslayers is one of my like least enjoyed ranges, I guess you could say, I'm having a proper I'm excited to see this. I'm actually excited to see them do something a bit different with this army. And this looks fantastic. And that's even before you get to the fact that they've got a baby Magmadroth. I mean, they got a baby Magmadroth. Come on, that's awesome. They've borderline achieved the impossible with this, because the Fyreslayers range is one of my more maligned ones, and one of the ones that I just don't get really any enjoyment out of. And I've long been of the opinion that they just are too dull and repetitive. And they've shown me what are effectively just a bunch of, here's more Fyreslayers. Here's more infantry for an army that consists almost entirely of just the same infantry over and over again. And despite the fact that it is just more infantry in an infantry-heavy army, even if it is for Warcry rather than AOS, I'm still excited by it. I still think it looks really good. Like, I still think each one of them looks great and unique and different, and there are so many little changes and little bits of personalisation that the fact that they are for the Fyreslayers just makes me excited for the idea of, well, imagine if they took that approach and actually did the whole force like that. Imagine if when you get a box of 10 lads, you don't get a box of clones. You actually get a box of individuals made into a cohesive force, which is not what the current range looks like, but it is what that warband looks like, and they've done an absolutely fantastic job with it. Question is, what do you think? Do you reckon they have in fact solved the repetitive issue of the Fyreslayers? Let me know in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, YouTube members, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click it if you don't want to, and as always, I will see you for the next one.